Chapter 2494. Not at all. Purely in terms of cultivation and combat power, Your Excellency is very strong, stronger than anyone in Lin Tian's memory. Lin Tian faced the ancestral god of 10 directions calmly. If that's the case, why are you diverting your power to protect others while fighting with me? The ancestral god of 10 directions asked. Lin Tian smiled, still calm. As the immortal emperor, I should protect the peace of all living beings. Behind the ancestral god of 10 directions, 10 divine rings vibrated, and dazzling light intertwined. He looked at the celestial arch and an old drunkard in the distance, then looked at Lin Tian again. The celestial arch, the human king, and you. Although you are not of my race, I admire you. You are willing to risk your lives for a group of unrelated people. You are worthy of my admiration. As he said this, his eyes gradually became cold again. However, I will not show mercy. In a battle of life and death, there is no mercy. With a boom, the 10 divine rings behind him bloomed with an even brighter light, and the aura of the laws became even more frightening. You will eventually die in this battle, and your father, master, and friends will not be able to survive. He looked at Lin Tian and walked towards him step by step. The surging aura of laws was like a subject that had its own consciousness. It shook outside his body and interweaved with a heaven-shaking might. This sovereign guarantees you that you will be buried with the highest honors. Lin Tian smiled. Then I really have to thank you, Your Excellency. As he spoke, his expression became solemn, and the holy light outside his body burned like a raging flame. However, I will not lose, and I will not disappoint my master and father. My family, my friends, I will protect them all. As for the other living beings, I will also protect them. His life essence shone brightly, and his divine soul also shone with a frightening holy light. Endless dimensional laws intertwined around him. Instead of retreating, he used the reincarnation sword and reincarnation diagram to isolate the light of destruction that permeated the 9th and 8th dimensions with his will to protect the countless living beings below. At the same time, he faced the 10 ancestral gods head-on. Boom! In the blink of an eye, large swaths of land were destroyed, and swaths of the void were annihilated. Bang! The ancestral god of 10 directions punched out, penetrating the boundless laws of light and landing on Lin Tian's chest, sending Lin Tian flying 1,000 feet away. Blood splattered in the air bit by bit. Lin Tian's mouth was bleeding, but his eyes were resolute. Without the slightest intention of retreating, he channeled all of his dimensional laws into his body. Taking a step forward, he brandished his reincarnation fist. With a single punch, the sky was instantly filled with fist shades. Majestic and mighty, they enveloped every single corner of the surroundings. Boom! The sky trembled and rumbled, as if a sacred drum had been beaten, and the ground collapsed. In the vast 10-directional divine realm, there was even lava surging up and scorching air currents constantly sweeping across this place. Behind the ancestral gods of 10 directions, 10 divine rings shone brightly. 10 types of self-created laws, each of them surpassing the laws of the 10th dimension. Each of them was more terrifying than the last. At this moment, as they interweaved together, the power they formed instantly shattered everything. Then, strands of nomological light penetrated the void and landed directly on Lin Tian's body. It was as if the sky was pressing down on him. With a bang, Lin Tian was sent flying again. Blood instantly appeared on his body, and his body was covered in cracks. However, he didn't care about this at all, and his expression didn't change at all. Again! He steadied himself and circulated the laws of the Reincarnation Heart Sutra, quickly healing his injured body. Then, he faced the ancestral gods of 10 directions again. At the same time, he circulated the reincarnation sword and reincarnation diagram across the greater heaven and earth. These two, one was his origin weapon, and the other was his origin monarch territory. Both of them were closely related to his origin. Therefore, with his current cultivation, he could still circulate them even though he was separated by the barriers of 2 realms. He used them to meet all of the destructive light that seeped into the 2 realms, shattering them one by one and protecting the countless living beings below. If he didn't do this, the living beings in the two realms wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. Moreover, if he didn't make a move, then the light of destruction would continue to seep into the heavens and the earth below, and it would cause even more living beings to suffer and die miserably. Something like that was absolutely not something he was willing to see happen, and he had to stop it. However, there were too many destructive lights that seeped into the lower realms, and he really couldn't destroy them all in a short period of time. Therefore, it was impossible for him to channel all of his battle strength to the ancestral gods of 10 directions, and it was difficult for him to unleash his strongest battle strength. The ancestral gods of 10 directions' eyes shone brightly as they faced Lin Tian head-on. 10 types of laws pressed down again and again. Moreover, the golden ancestral god's scepter in his hand trembled. The cracks on it had already been repaired, and it erupted with the most terrifying primordial divine light. It turned into a divine wave that could suppress everything, and it pressed down on Lin Tian mercilessly. Ka! 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 Large swaths of the void were distorted and destroyed. Lin Tian swung his fist and hit the ancestral gods of 10 directions amidst the divine wave, shattering half of their bodies. Good! Very good! The ancestral gods of 10 directions shouted coldly. Lin Tian moved down to the lower realms with the reincarnation sword and reincarnation map, and divided at least 20% of his battle strength to protect the living beings in the lower realms. However, he was still able to injure the ancestral gods of 10 directions. His battle strength was too strong and too shocking. Blood flowed from the ancestral gods of 10 directions' mouth. There was no coldness in his eyes, only indifference. His broken body reformed in the blink of an eye, and he attacked Lin Tian head-on again. He attacked with the purest laws and the purest divine light, and he didn't make any detours. Lin Tian's eye of destiny and eye of reincarnation vibrated at the same time, and the boundless light of providence and reincarnation continued to clash with the ancestral gods of 10 directions. Boom! There was an intense collision, and the void rumbled continuously. Divine light surged, and the destructive light swept in all directions, landing beside the Sky Emperor and the others. A large part of it also swept towards the ordinary gods further away. Lin Tian waved his hand, and the chaotic laws of the 9 heavens fell beside his father and the others, shattering all the destructive light that swept towards them. Now, he was fighting with the ancestral gods of 10 directions. This kind of destructive light was too terrifying, and even his father and master couldn't withstand it. Otherwise, his father and master would have gone down to the lower realms to help destroy the destructive light. They wouldn't have continued to stay here. Almost at the same time, the ancestral gods of 10 directions moved. Their 10th divine ring vibrated, and the destructive light that swept towards the ordinary gods was shattered in the blink of an eye. Retreat further away, he said in a low voice to the gods in the distance. Yes, ancestral gods. The ordinary gods responded and immediately retreated. Soon, they retreated further away and looked over from a distance. Lin Tian's body was surrounded by divine light. He looked at the ancestral gods of 10 directions and couldn't help but smile. I thought that ancestral gods only wanted to step into a higher dimension and didn't care about anything else. I didn't expect that you would also protect other gods. The ancestral gods of 10 directions said coldly. They are my people, and I want to take them with me when I step into a higher dimension. Lin Tian couldn't help but smile when he heard that. At the same time, he understood why the gods he had met before believed in the ancestral gods of 10 directions so deeply. Even if the ancestral gods were evil, those gods still believed that the ancestral gods of 10 directions were right. It was because the ancestral gods of 10 directions truly treated those gods as his people and had the heart to protect them. He didn't say much. He stepped forward, and majestic divine power swept out again. As a leader, it was right and proper for the ancestral gods of 10 directions to protect those gods. However, invading the lower realms and melting all the heavens and earth, using the lives of countless living beings to open a path to a higher dimension, was wrong. It was evil. If it was wrong, he had to stop it. He was an immortal emperor. He didn't invade other worlds, nor did he kill innocent people. At the same time, he had to protect the ordinary living beings. This was the principle that his senior brother, who was like a brother to him, taught him. Boom! The divine light was dazzling, and as it surged, he activated his Eye of Destiny, an Eye of Reincarnation with his strongest combat power. The ancestral god of 10 directions' eyes were cold, and the 10 divine halos behind him intertwined and shone brightly. The intense battle shook the 10 directions' divine realms. Blood kept splattering everywhere, but most of it was Lin Tian's blood. I've already said it long ago. If you distract it to protect a group of irrelevant people, you can only lose to me in the end, the ancestral god of 10 directions said. Lin Tian kept bleeding from his mouth, but his eyes were deep and calm. He said solemnly, I don't believe that I will lose. I will make you believe that your defeat is already foreordained, the ancestral god of 10 directions said coldly. Unparalleled nomological laws pressed down on Lin Tian in waves. Lin Tian remained silent. While controlling the reincarnation sword and the reincarnation diagram of the king's territory through the 2 barriers of heaven and earth, he helped the countless living beings in the 9th dimension and 8th dimension resist the light of destruction that seeped into the lower realm while facing the ancestral god of 10 directions head-on. As a result, he fell further and further behind. In the blink of an eye, the intense battle lasted for another month. During that month, the light of destruction that seeped into the lower realm continued. He couldn't block the attacks from the ancestral god of 10 directions with his peak combat power. Hence, he was shattered by the ancestral god of 10 directions again and again. He suffered heavy injuries, and the aura he exuded gradually became very weak. However, the look in his eyes remained resolute. The heavenly Dharch and an old drunkard watched from afar. An old drunkard was no longer smiling, and neither was the heavenly Dharch. Their gazes became solemn as they stared at Lin Tian without blinking. The heavenly Dharch trembled slightly. Over the past month, she had watched Lin Tian get smashed by the ancestral god of 10 directions again and again. She had seen Lin Tian get injured continuously, and his aura become weaker and weaker. Her heart ached for him because he was her flesh and blood. Little 10. The saintess of the all heavens whispered, her heart aching for him too. Wu Yi's gaze was gentle, and she clasped her hands together like how little Tianyin used to be. The reincarnation forging spiritual art and the reincarnation tribulation transcendence song were no longer effective on Lin Tian, but she could still pray for Lin Tian to win. Almost at the same time, in the 10 directions ancient star in the distance in the 10 directions divine realm, there was a slight tremor. Wisps of faint light spread out from the 10 directions ancient star on their own. They were extremely hazy and gentle, and gradually landed on the battlefield between Lin Tian and the ancestral god of 10 directions. They surrounded Lin Tian, who was covered in blood. Chapter 2495. As the faint light surrounded him, Lin Tian was the first to react. The injuries on his body began to heal rapidly. Moreover, his essence, energy, and spirit began to recover bit by bit, becoming stronger. Following the faint light, he tilted his head and looked at the 10-directional ancient star. At the same time, the ancestral god stopped attacking Lin Tian and looked up at the 10-directional ancient star. This invincible ancestral god narrowed his eyes as he looked at the 10-directional ancient star from afar. The celestial emperor, human king, goddess, and the others were also shocked. The 10-directional ancient star was the core of the 10-dimensional heaven. It was the heart of the 10-dimensional heaven. Now, it was emitting light of its own accord toward Lin Tian. What's going on? In the distance, the ordinary gods were also shocked. The heart of the 10-dimensional ancient star was emitting light toward Lin Tian at this moment, causing Lin Tian's aura to gradually recover. This caused all the gods to have a bad feeling at this moment. 1. The 10-directional ancient star buzzed, and the already hazy light outside became even more hazy. Gradually, under everyone's eyes, the huge 10-directional ancient star began to shrink. In the blink of an eye, it turned into the purest treasure light, filled with the purest light of heaven and earth and the light of gods. It came to Lin Tian on its own accord and spun around Lin Tian. Waves of heaven and earth light and God light poured into Lin Tian's body. Instantly, Lin Tian's injuries healed faster, and his essence, energy, and spirit began to strengthen rapidly. Looking at the heart of the 10-dimensional ancient star, Lin Tian's eyes flickered. The heart of the 10-dimensional ancient star had come to his side on its own accord. The ancestral god's eyes narrowed again, and they immediately attacked. The 10 divine rings behind them vibrated violently, interweaving the most brilliant light of laws around them. They bombarded Lin Tian while grabbing at the heart of the 10-dimensional ancient star beside Lin Tian. Lin Tian raised his hand to meet them. At the same time, he controlled the reincarnation sword and reincarnation diagram to protect the living beings below. Boom! The two collided, and the space around them shook. Lin Tian retreated, blood gushing out of his mouth again. At the same time, the speed at which the 10th dimensional heart revolved around his body became slightly faster. An extremely hazy light suddenly spread out, crushing all the laws that the ancestral gods had summoned, and sending them flying with a bang. Ancestor God! In the distance, the group of ordinary deities could not help but ask. The ancestral gods of 10 directions steadied themselves. Blood flowed out of their mouths. It was also at this time that the 10th dimensional heart beside Lin Tian emitted a gentle holy light that entered Lin Tian's body. For a moment, Lin Tian trembled slightly, and the injuries on his body began to heal at an even faster rate. Divine light surged from every corner of the vast 10 directions divine domain and entered his body, surrounding him and causing his cultivation base and aura to soar once again. The 10 ancestral gods gritted their teeth. Their 10 types of laws vibrated as they once again tried to grab Lin Tian. Outside Lin Tian's body, the divine light vibrated on its own, turning into a wave of ripples that blasted him away with a bang. Shrouded in endless divine light, the 10th dimensional heart and his body gradually moved towards his life origin. At the same time, images suddenly appeared around the 10th dimensional heart. There were images of him suppressing the dark chaos in the 10 directions divine domain on his own, images of him preaching the Tao to all living beings in the 10 directions divine domain after ascending to the 10th heaven, images of his origin reincarnation sword, and reincarnation diagram of the monarch territory, protecting all living beings in the 2 heavens below. The heavens are benevolent, and the Tao is benevolent. Vaguely, the vague heavenly voice echoed in his heart, and the 10th dimensional heart merged with his life origin in the blink of an eye. In an instant, his body erupted with boundless holy light. In every corner of the 10 directions divine domain, boundless divine light interweaved and entered his body at an even faster speed. In the blink of an eye, his injuries were completely healed, and the aura he exuded increased at an even more astonishing speed. The heavens are benevolent, and the Tao is benevolent, Lin Tian muttered to himself. The 10th dimensional heart was not a living being, but it seemed to have its own will, which seemed to be the will of heaven and earth. No living being in the world could take the initiative to merge with it, and only those who it recognized could do so. Only those who were benevolent and kind could gain its recognition. So, that's how it is, he muttered to himself. For a time, even more intense divine light surrounded him, and his essence, energy, and spirit rose at an even faster speed. The ancestral gods of the 10 directions divine domain attacked Lin Tian again to stop him, but they were once again blasted away. The divine light was dazzling, and in the blink of an eye, dozens of breaths passed. After dozens of breaths, the divine light around Lin Tian's body became stable and gentle, and an extremely pure divine aura surrounded him, causing the entire 10 directions divine domain to hum. A gentle breeze blew across the vast 10th dimensional world, and the mountains, earth, and vegetation gave birth to a halo of light that surged towards Lin Tian, as if they were submitting to him. In the distance, a group of ordinary gods trembled, and their legs went weak, as if they could not help but want to kneel before Lin Tian. It was as if a supreme will was born from Lin Tian's body, as if it was born from heaven and earth, and it wanted them to kneel down and worship him. God, God, King! An elderly god said in a trembling voice. In the next moment, some gods knelt down, not because they wanted to, but because the will of heaven and earth was pressuring them. Gradually, one by one, the gods knelt down, trembling violently. How can this be? Our divine domain, the heaven and earth that gave birth to us, actually recognizes a human? The ancestral god is the king. How can this be? How can this be? The gods involuntarily knelt down, gritting their teeth. They were born from the divine realm of 10 directions. Lin Tian had merged with the heart of the 10th dimension, which made him the master of the divine realm of 10 directions. He had absolute pressure on them. Even if they didn't want to kneel, they were still forced to. They could not resist the will of heaven and earth. In the distance, the goddess and the all-heavens saintesses were stunned, and then they all revealed excited expressions. Even Wu Yi's eyes shone brightly. The 10 directions divine king! The goddess could not help but exclaim. There was a legend that had existed since ancient times in the divine domain. As long as one could fuse with the 10th dimensional heart and obtain its recognition, they would become the master of the divine domain of 10 directions. They would be the all-knowing divine king of 10 directions, the king of all gods. Now, her child, her flesh and blood, with the body of a human, had obtained the recognition of the 10th dimensional heart and become a divine king. Good! An old drunkard laughed loudly and said this one word. The celestial emperor did not speak, but he also laughed. The ancestral god of 10 directions trembled slightly. Although he was almost invincible, at this moment, facing Lin Tian who had successfully merged with the 10th dimensional heart, he, like the other ordinary gods, had the urge to kneel. The will of heaven and earth was pressuring him. The 10 directions divine king! His voice was low as he stared unblinkingly at Lin Tian. This sovereign is the first to be born from the divine domain, but the divine domain has rejected this sovereign time and time again. Now, it has even acknowledged a human from the lower realms. This sovereign does not understand. Divine light surrounded Lin Tian's body. His injuries had long been healed, and his cultivation base was boundlessly strong. With a slight thought, the reincarnation sword and the reincarnation portrait erupted with a torrential sacred light that was many times stronger than before. In an instant, it destroyed all the destructive light and returned to his body through the gate of heaven and earth. He looked at the ancestral god of 10 directions and said calmly, "The heavens are benevolent, and the Tao is benevolent." This is the heavenly voice of the 10th dimensional heart before it merged with my life essence. The eyes of the ancestral god of 10 directions flickered as he looked at the lower realms. The heavens are benevolent, and the Tao is benevolent. You risked your life to protect the living beings below, and the 10th dimensional heart recognized you because of that, recognizing you as the 10th dimensional king? Looking at the several realms below, he thought about how Lin Tian had been protecting the countless living beings below, and how he had suffered heavy injuries time and time again, yet he still refused to summon back the reincarnation sword and the reincarnation portrait. Vaguely, he seemed to have comprehended something, and his gaze fluctuated. Just because of that, an ordinary god spoke up. Although they were under the pressure of the will of the heavens and were kneeling before Lin Tian, who had become the divine king, they were still unconvinced. Lord Ancestral God also protected us, so why did the 10th dimensional heart not acknowledge Lord Ancestral God? On what basis? The other gods echoed. Although they were all kneeling before Lin Tian, they were still unconvinced and spoke up one after another. Some struggled to stand up, but at this time, in front of the will of the heavens and in front of Lin Tian, who had already become the divine king of 10 directions, they, who were far less powerful than the ancestral god of 10 directions, found it difficult to stand up. Lord Ancestral God is your leader, and protecting you is his responsibility and obligation as a leader. It has nothing to do with benevolence or kindness. He invaded the lower realms and wanted to refine the world below, killing countless living beings. It has nothing to do with benevolence or kindness, and is the opposite of evil. As such, how can he be acknowledged by the 10th dimensional heart? An old drunkard said. The gods trembled slightly, but they were still unconvinced. They gritted their teeth and looked at Lin Tian. What about him? Isn't he an immortal emperor? He should be the leader of you humans, and protecting the living beings below is also his responsibility and obligation. It has nothing to do with benevolence or kindness, so how is he different from our Lord Ancestral God? How can he be acknowledged by the 10th dimensional heart? You are all wrong. The Celestial Emperor said. Although he is an immortal emperor, he is not the leader of the human race. He is only the leader of a holy land. And the world below is not only inhabited by the human race, there are countless living beings of other races. In terms of race, there are at least 100,000 races. He is not only protecting the human race, he is protecting all the races in the lower realms. The gods opened their mouths, wanting to refute, but for a moment, they could not find the words. Good, very good. The heavens are benevolent, and the Tao is kindness. Very good. The ancestral god of 10 directions laughed. Facing Lin Tian, who had become a divine king, his divine body could not help but tremble slightly, as if the will of the heavens was forcing him to submit. However, with his powerful strength, this will of the heavens did not have much effect on him. Lin Tian calmly looked at the ancestral god of 10 directions with divine radiance around his body. He did not have the slightest bit of arrogance. Lord Ancestral God, are you willing to give up on the dangerous idea of refining the world below and let this eternal war end? Chapter 2496. The ancestral god of 10 directions' thoughts were very dangerous, but Lin Tian did not hate him. If possible, he did not want to kill him. The ancestral god of 10 directions tilted his head and looked at the group of ordinary gods in the distance who were forced to kneel before Lin Tian under the pressure of the will of the world. He said, I once promised them that I would lead them to a higher dimension and forge a more brilliant cultivation path for them. They have been working hard for this, and have always believed in me. They were determined to kill their way into the lower realms. You want me to stop? You want me to go back on my promise to them? He looked at Lin Tian and said in a low voice, Absolutely impossible. With a rumble, the 10 divine rings behind him released an even more shocking divine spirit, and the fluctuations of the laws became even more terrifying. His trembling body calmed down, and his powerful strength resisted the pressure of the will of the world. Even though you have transformed into a god king and become even stronger, this venerable may not necessarily lose. Looking at Lin Tian, he coldly repeated the words he had said before. Either I obliterate you and take back the heart of the 10th dimension, smelt the few worlds below, open up the path to a higher dimension, and open up an even more glorious cultivation path. Or I die in your hands and you successfully protect the lower realms, and continue to live in the lower realms with your family and friends. As he finished speaking, he stepped forward. The 10 divine rings vibrated, and the power of the laws became even more dazzling and eye-catching. The space in all directions distorted as he turned into a divine light and closed in on Lin Tian. A direct attack. Lin Tian's gaze was calm as he faced his opponent's approach. He casually turned his body and avoided the attack of the 10 great laws. Then, he flicked his finger, and a ray of light fell on the ancestral god of 10 directions. With a bang, he was sent flying more than 10,000 feet away. Golden blood splattered in the void. Why are you so stubborn? He looked at the ancestral god of 10 directions and said, You are no longer my opponent now. Blood gushed out of the ancestral god's mouth, but there was no anger in his eyes. Neither was there a trace of coldness. Since I've made a promise to my people, I will definitely fulfill it. If I fail to fulfill this promise in the end, then there can only be one possibility, and that is that I've disappeared from this world. He looked at Lin Tian and said coldly, But right now, I'm still alive. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a loud boom. Monstrous saint energy burst out from him, and his aura became even stronger as he attacked Lin Tian again. Boundless killing light suppressed the space in all directions. Even the will of the heavens and earth in the deity domain could not suppress his disrespect for Lin Tian, the king of the 10th dimension. Lin Tian was very calm, and he didn't move at all. The killing lights unleashed by the 10 ancestral gods all vanished around him. From your point of view, your feelings towards the other gods are worthy of my admiration. He continued, However, your feelings towards the other divinities, you must uphold your promise to them and not allow other innocent living beings to lose their lives for it. With a flick of his finger, a beam of light flew out and landed on the ancestral god of 10 directions. Puff! Blood splattered everywhere as the ancestral god of 10 directions was penetrated, and golden blood splattered everywhere. The ancestral god of 10 directions' tall and straight body trembled as he retreated a few steps. Golden blood seeped out of his chest bit by bit. Ancestral god! In the distance, the group of ordinary gods could not help but call out. The ancestral god of 10 directions' chest was dyed red. After taking 2 hits from Lin Tian, his aura instantly weakened greatly. Ancestral god, is it all right to give up? Lin Tian looked at the other party and spoke again. No. The ancestral god of 10 directions calmly shook his head. You have your principles, and I have my beliefs. In your master's words, our paths are different. Behind him, the 10 divine halos bloomed with an even stronger light, becoming more and more resplendent. The ancestral god's scepter also began to glow. Even if you are a divine king and have been recognized by the deity domain, I may still have the ability to fight you. The strongest law has already manifested, and I will sacrifice the last law, he said. As he finished speaking, the 10 divine halos behind him merged with the golden scepter and merged into his body. For a moment, an extremely turbulent aura spread out from his body. It was many times stronger than before. This scepter was born with me. With it as a guide, all the self-created laws will be shattered and merged into my flesh and bones. It will last for 7 days. He looked at Lin Tiandao. After 7 days, all 10 laws will disappear. The last law will be called Meteor. Outside his body, his aura continued to strengthen. In the blink of an eye, it had reached an extremely terrifying level. Even the deity domain was shaking. Lin Tian's eyes flickered. After 7 days, all 10 self-created laws will disappear? So this is what the last here means? Newborn king, I am coming, the ancestral god of 10 directions said as he stepped toward Lin Tian. Come. Lin Tian replied calmly as he walked toward the other party. The next moment, the sound of something breaking through the air rang out. The speed of the two far exceeded the speed of light, and they collided in an instant. The void was silently annihilated, and the ground collapsed. Outside Lin Tian's body, the purest divine light vibrated and shook everything away. Clang! Without any superfluous movements, he simply flicked his finger, and a divine sword light shot out in a divine rainbow. With a puff, blood splattered as the ancestral god of 10 directions was penetrated, just like before. However, this time, the ancestral god of 10 directions wasn't pushed back. Instead, he quickly stepped in front of Lin Tian and punched him. Lin Tian raised his hand and met the attack head-on. Bang! The two collided with a deafening sound. The ancestral god of 10 directions was pushed back again, and a part of the void collapsed. At the same time, Lin Tian was also pushed back, and the void behind him also collapsed. Lord Ancestral God! Lord Ancestral God is invincible! He will definitely win! Yes! He will definitely win! In the distance, the ordinary gods gritted their teeth and clenched their fists. The goddess and saintess of all heavens were moved. The saintess of all heavens sighed. This ancestral god of 10 directions is truly terrifying. Little Ten is already a godly king, but as a god, he can still push Little Ten back. You're wrong. An old drunkard spoke. He looked at Lin Tian with a deep gaze. He didn't use the power of a godly king at all. He's only using his own strength to fight the ancestral god of 10 directions. That's right, the celestial emperor said. Lin Tian steadied himself on the battlefield. Wisps of divine radiance circled around his body. Lord Ancestral God, please continue, he said calmly. After obtaining the approval of the 10th dimensional heart and successfully assimilating it, he was now the godly king of the 10 directions divine domain, the master of the 10th dimension. If he wanted to, he could directly mobilize the power of the entire 10 directions divine domain to deal with the ancestral god of 10 directions. However, he didn't do so, and he didn't intend to do so now. This was because he couldn't move when he was assimilating the 10th dimensional heart. After all, it was the 10th dimensional heart that was entering his origin, and he wasn't the one controlling it. If he wanted to move, he could only force the 10th dimensional heart out of his body. Moreover, this process would take at least 6 to 7 breaths of time. The ancestral god of 10 directions was absolutely clear on this point. At that time, in just a few breaths of time, the other party had been able to suppress his father and master, force him to give up on fusing with the heart of the 10th dimension, or even force him to submit. However, Lin Tian clearly knew this at that time, but he didn't do so. This was enough to show that he was a straightforward and upright person. As such, he naturally didn't want to mobilize the power of the 10 directions divine domain to fight Lin Tian. The divine radiance around him was hazy and pure as it met the heavenly meteor law head-on. At the same time, the origin reincarnation light and the light of providence pulsed as they pressed down on Lin Tian. The 10 divine rings behind the ancestral god of 10 directions had already disappeared, and the ancestral god's scepter had disappeared as well. It had turned into the strongest heavenly meteor law, and its aura was extremely grand. It didn't fear Lin Tian's origin reincarnation light and light of providence at all, and it also collided head-on. Boom! The most intense collision caused the 10 directions divine domain to collapse. Lin Tian pushed away the heavenly meteor law, and the origin reincarnation light, light of providence, and origin reincarnation light converged as he punched out. With a bang, the punch landed firmly on the ancestral god of 10 directions' chest, shattering half of his physical body. However, at the same time, the ancestral god of 10 directions' fist also landed on Lin Tian's chest. Bang! Lin Tian was knocked back, but his physical body didn't shatter. However, some cracks appeared on his body, and blood seeped out. The ancestral god of 10 directions' face darkened. He could see the difference between them in this simple exchange. I don't need to maintain the heavenly meteor for 7 days. 2 days, he muttered to himself. As soon as he finished speaking, his body trembled, and blood seeped out of his body. However, the aura of the heavenly meteor law around his body suddenly increased by more than 10 times. This aura caused Lin Tian's eyes to involuntarily narrow slightly. However, even so, he didn't show any fear. Very strong. He said these 2 words, which went against the 9 heavens law. As strands of law intertwined, his aura rose steadily. This was a law that he had created himself, and it could be considered as his most powerful law. In the next moment he moved. Once again, he faced the ancestral god of 10 directions head-on, and clashed with him. The ancestral god of 10 directions met the attack with the heavenly meteor law without retreating. In an instant, the battle between the two became even more intense. In the blink of an eye, an entire day had passed. Blood splattered continuously in the 10 directions divine domain, and it was all the ancestral god of 10 directions blood. The ancestral god of 10 directions physical body was shattered again and again. However, although Lin Tian didn't bleed, he wasn't unscathed either. His aura became much weaker as time passed. After all, he didn't use the power that a godly king should have at the moment. Moreover, the ancestral god of 10 directions, who had refined all of his laws, was indeed very strong and terrifying. The final blow. The ancestral god of 10 directions was covered in blood, but there was no anger in his eyes or face. Outside his body, the heavenly meteor law became even more terrifying, and he continued to compress and strengthen it. Come on, godly king! This blow will decide the outcome. All right, Lin Tian said calmly. Outside his body, the 9 heavens law in reverse became even more turbulent as he faced the ancestral god of 10 directions head-on. In the blink of an eye, the two collided. Unparalleled sacred light drowned out everything, covering everything in all directions. Heh! All of a sudden, a sinister sneer rang out. A figure shrouded in a thick blood-red radiance rushed over at an extremely fast speed. Chapter 2497. The figure shrouded in blood-red light moved extremely quickly and arrived in front of them in the blink of an eye. "Give all of your bodies to me!" A cold laugh rang out. Lin Tian's expression changed when he heard the familiar voice. "It's you! The third Divine Emperor." In the past, when he was training alone in the 10 Divine Realms, he had chased after the third Divine Emperor for several years, but he had never succeeded. Every time he killed the third Divine Emperor's avatar, it was his avatar. Now that he had met the third Divine Emperor again, the third Divine Emperor had taken the initiative to attack him. At the same time, the ancestral god recognized the third Divine Emperor. His expression darkened. "What are you doing? Ancestral god, please merge with this human and me." The third Divine Emperor laughed sinisterly. The blood-red light around his body was vast and boundless. While Lin Tian and the ancestral god were having a hard time fighting each other, the third Divine Emperor and the ancestral god were engulfed by the blood-red light like raging waves. The sudden turn of events caused everyone's expression to change. "Divine Emperor, what are you doing? That's the ancestral god. What are you doing?" In the distance, the group of ordinary gods was shocked. They didn't know what the third Divine Emperor had done in the past. At the same time, the Heavenly Emperor and an old drunkard frowned and attacked at the same time. Boundless laws swept toward the third Divine Emperor. The third Divine Emperor laughed sinisterly. With a loud rumble, the blood-red light swept out like a raging wave and annihilated the Heavenly Emperor and an old drunkard's laws. The two of them were forced back several hundred feet. "Heavenly Emperor, Human King, you didn't expect this, did you? The two of you who were once invincible are now so weak in front of me." He laughed sinisterly. The Heavenly Emperor and an old drunkard steadied themselves. Blood flowed from their mouths and their auras weakened to the extreme. At this moment, they even temporarily lost the ability to move. How is this possible? The goddesses and saintesses were shocked. They had searched for the third Divine Lord in the sea of consciousness of some of the elites of the lineage of God's spirits. The third Divine Lord was weaker than the first Divine Lord and second Divine Lord who had already fallen. But now, how could he have such strong combat power? Even Wu Yi was moved. Looking at Lin Tian, who was shrouded in blood-red light, boundless divine light intertwined around her body as she attacked the third Divine Lord with the goddess and saintesses of the all-heavens. "Don't come over! I can come out!" Lin Tian shouted, stopping the three of them in their tracks. Now, the third Divine Lord's strength had reached an extremely high level. Even his father and master were no match for him. If Wu Yi and the others went forward, they would probably be destroyed in a single blow. How could he dare to let them come over at this time? "You can go out? Stop dreaming." The third Divine Sovereign laughed sinisterly. "All of you will become a part of me!" Outside his body, the blood-red light fluctuated, becoming even more dense and vast. Lin Tian's expression became serious. With a honglong sound, divine light surged. Reincarnation light trembled, bombarding the blood-colored radiance that covered his body. However, this light was extremely strange and terrifying. With his current strength, he was unable to break it. "It's that kind of power!" His pupils suddenly shrank. He remembered that the crimson light came from the same source as the special power that had entered Tian Yin's body back then. The only difference was that in this place, the crimson light that the third Divine King had conjured was far from what the crimson light in Tian Yin's body could compare to. One was the sky, and the other was the earth. The difference was too great. At this time, being shrouded in this strange blood-red light, he couldn't open his body at all. He wanted to mobilize the power of the 10 Directions Divine Domain, but found that he couldn't communicate with the 10 Directions Divine Domain at all. It was as if he had been cut off and couldn't mobilize the boundless power of heaven and earth of the 10 Directions Divine Domain. Most importantly, his power was flowing away nonstop. Furthermore, the speed at which it was flowing away was extremely fast. At the same time, on the other side, the 10 ancestral gods were also unable to break free from the blood-red light. At this time, an extremely strong murderous intent suddenly erupted. "Bastard!" His voice was extremely angry. At this moment, the leader of the god's spirit lineage showed a monstrous anger for the first time. While being shrouded in this strange blood-red light and his power was being devoured by the third Divine Lord, he felt that the boundless divine souls in the third Divine Lord's body had all been annihilated. They were intertwined in the third Divine Lord's origin like stored food. As expected of the ancestral god, the number one Divine Lord, you instantly sensed the other divine souls in my body. The third Divine Lord laughed sinisterly. Don't be angry. Soon you will become one with me and meet your people. Then, he added, by the way, I will send the other divine souls to meet you as well. After that, your long-cherished wish to break through to a higher dimension will be fulfilled by me. You can rest assured. Of course, you don't have to thank me. After his words sounded, the special and strange blood light around his body became even more vigorous. It was like a primal chaos swamp that sealed everything, causing the 10 ancestral gods and Lin Tian, who were enveloped by it, to be unable to escape for some time. Lord Divine Lord, you actually. In the distance, the group of ordinary divine souls was stunned when they heard the third Divine Lord's words. Then, all of them became furious. You actually devoured our compatriots. You betrayed Lord Ancestral God. Let go of Lord Ancestral God. Kill! Some of the older divine souls were extremely angry. As Lin Tian, the God King, was swept into the blood-red light, the will of heaven and earth that was suppressing the ordinary divine souls gradually weakened. Many of the divine souls could move again. At this time, all of them charged toward the third Divine Lord. For a moment, the divine radiance trembled. It was boundless and enveloped the entire area, pressing down like a rain of light. A bunch of ants. The third Divine Lord laughed sinisterly. Outside his body, the blood-red light surged and turned into a ripple that spread out. Puff! 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 Blood mist burst out. Immediately, a large number of divine souls exploded, their bodies and souls annihilated. Over the years, the third Divine Lord had secretly devoured too many divine souls and refined the special and strange blood-red energy into his body, turning it into his own. Now, he was countless times stronger than the celestial emperors and human kings. How could these ordinary divine souls withstand this ripple of light? One by one they died. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! The group of divine souls roared. They were not afraid at all. At this time, they were still madly charging toward the third Divine Lord. The third Divine Lord laughed sinisterly. The blood-red light splashed, and every divine soul that rushed toward him was shattered by the blood-red light. Lin Tian was shrouded in the blood-red light mist. Looking at these divine souls rushing toward him like moths to a flame, he once again felt that the 10 ancestral gods, the leader of the divine spirit lineage, were extremely important to these divine souls. He circulated the Reincarnation Heart Sutra faster. The 9-colored divine light intertwined, and all the precepts also intertwined. Moreover, he urged the Origin Reincarnation Light and Origin of Reincarnation together to meet the blood-red energy waves and bombard them. However, it was still useless. His power was constantly being drained. This made his expression become very serious. One should know that 10 years ago, he had used Origin of Reincarnation to help Tian Yin destroy this special and strange energy, but now he could not do it. The quality and quantity have far exceeded that time. The power in his body was constantly being drained, and it was difficult for him to communicate with the 10 divine regions. His expression became more and more serious. Rumble! Suddenly, not far away, a monstrous wave of spiritual energy shook out abruptly, like a mountain torrent erupting at this moment. The 10 ancestral gods were burning all over. Most importantly, a golden scepter rushed out of his body and burned as well. It directly erupted with the purest power of the greater heaven and earth, an extremely terrifying saint energy. This scepter was born together with the 10 ancestral gods. It was the most powerful precious weapon nurtured by heaven and earth. Human, please protect them well. A voice sounded in Lin Tian's heart. The 10 ancestral gods raised his hand, and the burning scepter of heaven and earth, his divine soul, and his flesh and blood turned into an extremely dense radiance that enveloped Lin Tian. With a furious roar, he pushed fiercely, breaking open a small gap in the boundless blood-red energy. Lin Tian was enveloped by the dense divine radiance, and directly pushed through the gap. Then, in the next moment, the gap was filled up by the blood-red energy and completely drowned out. This scene made Lin Tian's expression change instantly. At the same time, in the distance, the Sky Emperor, an old drunkard, the goddess, the All-Heaven's Saintess, and Wu Yi were all moved. By burning the precious weapon of heaven and earth that was born with you, your divine soul, and your flesh and blood, you can actually break open this external power that transcends yin, yang, and the 5 elements. I should say that you are indeed worthy of being the number 1 ancestral god. The third divine lord was also moved, but soon he smiled coldly and said, Do you think that you can't beat me now? But when he becomes a godly king, his true strength will be much stronger than yours. Do you think that he can defeat me with the power of a godly king after sending him out? Looking at the 10 ancestral gods shrouded in the blood-red energy, he sneered. You will be disappointed. As he spoke, the blood-red energy vibrated and forcibly suppressed the 10 ancestral gods, burning divine soul and flesh and blood. You are going to become a part of me. If you continue to burn like this, how can I increase my strength? Obediently become a part of me. The boundless blood-red energy turned the 10 ancestral gods into pure blood-red light in the blink of an eye, and instantly merged into the third divine lord's body. Ancestral god! The group of ordinary gods was shocked and furious as they charged toward the third divine lord in a frenzy. It was also at this moment that the void trembled as thick divine light intertwined and enveloped the group of gods. With a gentle force, it sent them tens of thousands of feet away. The divine light around Lin Tian's body surged as he looked at the third divine lord. His eyes were extremely cold as an extremely cold murderous intent surged out from him. I will kill you! Chapter 2498. Boom! The 10 divine realms shook violently. Divine spiritual light spread out in all directions, boundless and boundless. Lin Tian's eyes were cold as he looked at the third divine emperor. He took a step forward, and the entire 10 divine realms pulsed along with him. The boundless divine spiritual light swept toward the third divine emperor like a wave that could destroy the heavens and earth. The third divine emperor's expression changed immediately, and he quickly dodged. Lin Tian's aura as a divine king and the boundless divine spiritual power of the 10 divine realms were more terrifying than he had imagined. His eyelids twitched involuntarily. However, Lin Tian's speed at this moment, when he was mobilizing the power of the 10 divine realms, had already surpassed common sense. In just an instant, the void distorted, and Lin Tian appeared in front of the third divine emperor and punched him. Boom! Like the sound of a sacred drum being beaten, the punch landed solidly on the third divine emperor's chest. Pfft! Blood splattered, mixed with purple and red. The third divine emperor was sent flying, and more than half of his body was instantly shattered. Lin Tian took a step forward and pressed forward. With a rumble, boundless divine spiritual light followed him as he stepped forward, like the most devout believer. In the blink of an eye, the boundless divine spiritual wave landed on the third divine emperor and sent him flying again. Blood splattered everywhere. Clang! The reincarnation sword emerged from his body and blended with the boundless divine spiritual light, erupting with the most terrifying sword aura. He raised his hand, held the reincarnation sword, and slashed down with the boundless divine spiritual light. They were all gods. Although the ancestral gods of 10 Directions' way of thinking was quite dangerous, they were honest and upright people. Furthermore, they wanted to open up a higher dimension, not just for themselves, but for the sake of their promise to their subjects. In fact, when the ancestral gods of 10 Directions knew that they weren't a match for the third divine lord due to their heavy injuries, they did everything in their power to send the third divine lord out with that strange blood-colored energy. They even used the word, please, in order to ask the third divine lord to protect the other gods who were still alive. Such a person, even though he was an opponent and an enemy, was worthy of his respect. However, the third Sir God, who was a god spirit, was devouring one of his own kind after another. When the ancestral god of 10 directions, the leader of the god spirit lineage, was doing his best to open up a higher dimension for the god spirit lineage, he actually launched an attack and wanted to devour all of his own kind. How clear was this contrast? Clang! The sword radiance turned into a rain of swords and covered the surroundings. In the blink of an eye, it was right in front of the third divine emperor. For a moment, blood splattered everywhere. The third Sir God was pierced through like a beehive. As expected of the divine king! After enduring for so many years, the current me, who has transcended the power of yin and yang and the 5 elements, is only a hair's breadth away from attaining great success. My strength has long surpassed that of the ancestral gods, but I am still constantly being injured like this. Covered in blood, the third Sir God looked at Lin Tian. Wisps of blood-red light circled around his body. His voice was sinister, and there was an extremely uncomfortable sinister smile. However, it's no big deal. You will eventually be buried in my hands. His body was drenched in blood, but he was full of confidence. Lin Tian's eyes were cold and indifferent. He did not say anything unnecessary. He took a step forward, and the 10 directions divine territory pulsed with his will. Buzz! Unparalleled divine spiritual light pressed down like a waterfall from the heavens, directly enveloping the third Sir God. This was the power of heaven and earth of the 10 directions divine territory. It was extremely powerful, and it crushed the third Sir God into smithereens. However, the third Sir God's divine spirit did not shatter. As his flesh and blood wriggled, he quickly began to reform his physical body. Lin Tian's eyes were cold. His eye of reincarnation trembled slightly. Immediately, the reincarnation blood sea and reincarnation heavenly river appeared and pressed down on the third Sir God. At the same time, the entire 10 directions divine territory trembled as an even more boundless power pressed down on the third Sir God. He used the power of heaven and earth in conjunction with the reincarnation light to attack the third Sir God. He crushed his opponent again and again. Blood splattered everywhere. Kill him! Kill him! Lord Ancestor God! In the distance, the group of ordinary divine spirits were shocked, angry, and sorrowful. Their ancestor God, their leader, had disappeared. He had been devoured by the third Sir God. Boom! The 10 directions divine territory trembled. Endless divine spiritual light pressed down on the third Sir God from every corner of the territory. The third Sir God was crushed again and again. Blood splattered everywhere. Lin Tian's eyes were filled with cold light and murderous intent. At the same time, an extremely bad feeling gradually emerged in his heart. He was now the master of the 10 directions divine territory. Logically speaking, he should be invincible within the 10 directions divine territory. If he'd mobilized the 10 directions divine territory to attack the third Sir God, he should have killed him long ago. However, in reality, even though the third divine emperor was constantly being injured and shattered by him, her spirit was never destroyed. There was a strange and unique blood energy protecting the third Sir God's soul, ensuring that it remained intact. His eye of reincarnation trembled slightly as he mobilized more reincarnation light and the entire 10 directions divine territory to continue pressuring the third Sir God. Pft! 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 Blood splattered everywhere. The third Sir God was being crushed again and again, but he didn't die. That special blood energy had been protecting the other party's divine soul. Where did he get that kind of energy? Compared to the energy in the ancient domain in the 9th dimension, its quality and quantity are much higher. An old drunkard narrowed his eyes. The Sky Emperor didn't say anything, but his expression was solemn. They'd all seen this kind of special energy before. It was extremely troublesome. Back then, they'd been helpless when a small wisp of this energy entered little Tian Yin's body. But now, the third Sir God had found so much of this energy. Moreover, he'd managed to control it and use it flexibly. Boom! Saint energy vibrated in front of him as divine light and reincarnation light surged. Lin Tian mobilized the reincarnation light and the entire 10 directions divine territory to attack the third Sir God. 9 days passed in the blink of an eye. During these 9 days, the third Sir God was constantly being crushed in the 10 directions divine territory, but his soul remained intact. It was also on this day that the blood energy surrounding the third Sir God's soul suddenly erupted with a monstrous crimson light. Boom! A pillar of crimson light shot into the sky, mixed with an extremely intense divine light. Lin Tian's reincarnation light and divine territory's power crackled as they dispersed in the blink of an eye. A hazy crimson mist lingered in front of him and gradually dissipated. Lin Tian's eyes narrowed as he looked in that direction. At the same time, the group of ordinary gods, the Heavenly Emperor, and an old drunkard in the distance all changed their expressions. Surrounded by crimson light and divine light, the shattered third Sir God reformed his physical body. He was taller than before, and crimson lines intertwined on his face. It was a strange and peculiar sight. At the same time, like the 10 ancestral gods, divine rings appeared behind him. However, there were a total of 11 divine rings, each more terrifying than the last. The outer Tao's power has finally been completely integrated, and the ancestral god's power has also been completely integrated. Very good! Very good! Very perfect! The third Sir God laughed maniacally. Lin Tian's eyes were filled with coldness. However, at this moment, his expression turned solemn. Not only had the third Sir God's appearance changed, but his aura had also undergone a huge qualitative change. At this moment, he, who had become a divine king, felt an enormous pressure. Ancestral God's aura! You stole the ancestral god's power, you damned thing! In the distance, the group of ordinary gods was shocked and angry. The third Sir God sneered and swept his gaze over the group of ordinary gods. How dare ants cry out to the heavens? As his words fell, a large expanse of cold killing light intertwined and shot out at extreme speed toward the group of gods. The killing light's aura was too terrifying, and in the blink of an eye, it pressed down on the group of gods. It was also at this time that Lin Tian stepped forward and instantly blocked the group of gods, using the endless divine light to meet the killing light. The two collided, and the divine light was annihilated with a whoosh. The killing light unleashed by the third Sir God landed directly on his body. Poof! Blood splattered, and his chest burst open. Blood flowed out in large patches, and blood also overflowed from the corners of his mouth. This scene caused the goddesses and saintesses of all heavens to change their expressions. Lin Tian was already a divine king and had previously suppressed the third Sir God, but now, in the blink of an eye, he was injured by the third Sir God's killing light. At the same time, the group of ordinary gods was also shocked. Lin Tian had actually protected them. Human, what are you doing? Are you stupid? The third Sir God looked at Lin Tian and clicked his tongue. You killed your way from the lower realm to the divine territory, and these gods are not your enemies? Now you're actually protecting your enemies? Divine light surrounded Lin Tian's body and the light of reincarnation intertwined, and the injuries on his body healed at an extremely fast speed. I am a divine king, he said coldly. Having obtained the recognition of the 10th dimension's heart, he had become the master of the 10th divine territory and the king of all gods. Whether these gods recognized him as their king or not, this was an indisputable fact. Since he was the king, he naturally had a reason to protect these gods. Of course, this wasn't the main reason. In fact, it couldn't even be considered as the most insignificant reason. The main reason why he was willing to suffer injuries to protect these ordinary gods was because of the 10 directions ancestral gods. The ancestral god of 10 directions had sacrificed everything, including his supreme origin treasure, divine soul, and physical body, to send him out of the third Sir God's outer Tao power and asked him to protect the surviving gods. Since that was the case, how could he let these living gods suffer? Because you're a divine king, these gods are your subjects? So you want to protect them? The third Sir God laughed loudly as if he had heard the funniest joke. He looked at Lin Tian and mocked. If that's the case, Your Excellency Divine King, I'm also a god. Why did you attack me like that just now? Aren't you being too unfair as a divine king? You're wrong, Lin Tian said calmly. You're not a god, not a human, and not a monster. You're just the lowest kind of trash. Trash? The third Sir God's eyes darkened, and his gaze immediately became sinister. He revealed a cruel and cold smile. Good. Well said. Very well said. Then, today, this piece of trash will send you, the Divine King, on your way. Boom. Chapter 2499. Boundless nomological power surged violently, and its might was extremely terrifying. Wherever it passed, the boundless void instantly collapsed. An extremely terrifying murderous aura enveloped Lin Tian. This kind of power was so terrifying that even the Sky Emperor and an old drunkard were shocked. Lin Tian naturally felt immense pressure immediately. Divine light surged and moved the group of gods behind him tens of thousands of feet away. All the dimensional nomological laws and chaotic nine heavens nomological laws met this boundless murderous aura. In the blink of an eye, the two forces collided. Rumble! With a loud boom, the sky full of divine light and murderous aura twisted and intertwined. The next moment, they all collapsed. The surrounding space was collapsing piece by piece. Lin Tian's eyes were deep. He took a step forward and instantly appeared in front of the third Divine Emperor. He slashed down with the Samsara sword. Clang! The sword whistled ear-piercingly, and its momentum shook the heavens. The sword landed firmly on the third Divine Emperor's chest. With a puff, blood splattered and the third Divine Emperor was immediately sent flying. Lin Tian took a step forward. The entire 10 Directions Divine Territory was his territory. He appeared in front of the third Divine Emperor with just a thought. He did not give the third Divine Emperor any chance to catch his breath and directly slashed down mercilessly with his sword. At the same time, the completed Samsara portrait rushed out from behind him. It was mixed with boundless Samsara light and directly suppressed the third Divine Emperor. Boom! The Samsara sword and Samsara portrait landed behind the third Divine Emperor at the same time, and sent him flying again before he could stabilize his body. Moreover, at this moment, the entire 10 divine realms trembled slightly. Boundless divine light and the power of the 10 dimensions of heaven and earth swept toward this place together, turning into a truly destructive storm that engulfed the third Divine Lord. Instantly, blood splattered from the third Divine Emperor's body and dyed the surrounding void red. After all, he has already transformed into a Divine King. Although the third Divine Emperor has undergone a transformation, it seems that he is still no match for him, the goddess said and could not help but clench her fists. The All-Heaven's Holy Maiden also nodded. An old drunkard and the Sky Emperor's expressions became more serious than before. An old drunkard said in a low voice, "Don't just look at the surface. Very tricky," the Sky Emperor said in a low voice. The Divine Lady and the Saintess were shocked. What do you mean?" Rumble! Boundless divine light surged. Lin Tian exuded an intimidating saintly might from his body. All types of destructive power continuously descended upon the third Divine Sovereign. All the attacks landed on the third Divine Emperor. However, his expression grew heavier and heavier. All of his attacks landed on the third Divine Lord. The third Divine Lord was injured time and time again. Blood splattered everywhere, but his body did not shatter. In fact, he could clearly sense that his opponent's aura had not decreased in the slightest. His attack at this moment, in reality, was completely useless against his opponent. He gritted his teeth and growled, "Boundless Divine Slash!" Boundless divine spirit light erupted from the 10 divine realms. As soon as the 4 words were spoken, the godly spirit blades intertwined in the space of the 10 directions. Each of the blades was intertwined with extremely terrifying waves of energy. This was the source energy of the 10 directions divine domain, and it was many times more powerful than the chaotic 9 heavens laws. The boundless godly spirit blades carried the source energy of the 10 directions divine domain and landed on the third Divine Lord in the blink of an eye. Blood splattered everywhere. Smoke lingered in the air. Gradually, the smoke dispersed. The third Divine Lord was covered in blood and looked extremely miserable. However, Lin Tian's expression grew even heavier. "This realm, this body, this power," the third Divine Sovereign said. His entire body was drenched in blood, but he was still laughing wildly. After a few breaths of time, his wild laughter finally slowed down. "I'm sorry, but even I didn't think that I would be this strong." He looked at Lin Tian, the corners of his mouth curling upward with undisguised mockery. His injuries healed in an instant. "Your attack just now really made me itchy." What did he say? Just now? Tens of thousands of feet away, the expressions of the ordinary divine spirits changed drastically. How terrifying was the power Lin Tian used just now! He had mobilized the power of the 10 Directions divine domain, but the third Divine Lord said that it was merely itchy? At the same time, the Divine Lady, the All Heaven's Holy Maiden, and Wui were all moved by this scene and his words. The Heavenly Emperor and an old drunkard saw the real situation from the very beginning, so their expressions didn't change much. Lin Tian's expression was grave. The light of reincarnation revolved around his eyes, and the divine spirit light grew denser and denser. Divine power surged around his body and grew with each strand. The third Divine Lord was far too terrifying. Even though he had transformed into a divine king, he still felt extremely uneasy. It was also at this time that the third Divine Lord spoke. "I've been attacked by Your Excellency for so long. Now, it's time for me to return the favor." With a sinister smile on his face, the third Divine Lord moved. The first to 10th divine rings behind him shone brightly and bombarded Lin Tian with unparalleled power of laws. This power of laws completely belonged to the ancestor gods of the 10 Directions, but its power was far stronger than that of the ancestor gods of the 10 Directions. The difference between heaven and earth was like that between heaven and earth. It mercilessly pressed down on Lin Tian. Lin Tian summoned the boundless light of reincarnation and the divine spirit light to meet it head-on. The two collided, and in the blink of an eye, a monstrous light of destruction erupted. With a bang, Lin Tian retreated several hundred feet in the void. A stream of blood flowed out from his mouth. TSK, Your Excellency is so weak?" the third Divine Lord mocked. He took a step forward, and his speed reached the limit. The first 10 divine rings behind him vibrated again, and an even more terrifying power of laws pressed down on Lin Tian. "Let's continue." Lin Tian raised his hand and charged forward with the Sword of Reincarnation. Monstrous sword light erupted from the Sword of Reincarnation to meet the third Divine Lord's attack head-on. Moreover, the power of the origin of the 10 Directions divine territory was derived from various places, and it also blasted forward. Boom! The most powerful collision shook all directions. This time, with the support of more power of the origin of the 10 Directions divine territory, the third Divine Lord's boundless laws were shattered. The surging power of the origin of the divine territory, together with the Sword of Reincarnation and the Reincarnation diagram, pressed down on the third Divine Lord in the blink of an eye. TSK, how terrifying! You've scared me." The third Divine Lord looked shocked, but his expression was very playful. Behind him, the 11th divine ring shone, and a blood-red light surrounded him, enveloping his entire body. In the next moment, the unparalleled power of the divine territory, the Sword of Reincarnation, and the Reincarnation diagram of the monarch territory all landed on his body. Cracking sounds continued to be heard, and the surrounding void shattered piece by piece, and the territory collapsed piece by piece. Smoke and dust surrounded the surroundings, and then gradually dissipated. The third Divine Lord stood firmly on the spot, and he was not injured at all. Outside his body, the blood-red light intertwined, and there were no ripples. Such a scene caused the expressions of everyone present to change. Even Lin Tian was no exception. Just now, not only did he use the Reincarnation diagram and Sword of Reincarnation, he also mobilized the boundless power of the 10 Directions divine territory to attack. It was equivalent to controlling the entire divine territory to attack the third Divine Lord. However, Such an attack did not do anything to the third Divine Lord at all, as if it was completely blocked by the blood-red light outside his body. That power! Lin Tian's pupils contracted. With a rumble, the 10 Directions divine territory was in an uproar. As a divine king, he mobilized the power of the entire divine territory to attack again. In the blink of an eye, the boundless power of the divine territory once again pressed down on the third Divine Lord, landing directly on his body. However, it was still useless. This time, everyone saw clearly that the boundless power of the divine territory was completely blocked by the blood-red light. How could it be? What kind of power is that? How could it? Tens of thousands of feet away, the expressions of the divine spirits changed again and again. Lin Tian, who had already transformed into a divine king, mobilized the power of the 10 Directions divine territory to attack, but it was completely useless. Lin Tian's expression became increasingly grave. That blood-red power of the outer Tao was too strange and terrifying. TSK, Your Excellency, why do you look so pale? Are you tired? The third Divine Lord mocked. I have always been very benevolent. I will send Your Excellency to rest now. Oh, the kind where you can sleep forever. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a rumble and boundless power of laws swept toward Lin Tian in a straight line. At the same time, there were traces of outer Tao power mixed in. Lin Tian's eyes were cold and indifferent. The power of the divine territory boiled and the light of reincarnation shone brilliantly as they met the third Divine Lord's attack. With a rumble, the two collided and the light of destruction rippled out in waves. After a few breaths, Lin Tian was sent flying with a bang. There was a bloody hole in his chest. The blood-red power of the outer Tao seemed to be able to withstand all the powers of the Tao in the world. His attack was either completely blocked or infinitely weakened. There was no real effect at all. However, his expression did not change much. He quickly healed himself with the Reincarnation Heart Sutra. The Reincarnation Sword, the Reincarnation Diagram, the various dimensional laws, and the power of the divine territory surged together and turned into a monstrous wave of killing power that blasted toward the third Divine Lord again. Behind the third Divine Lord, 11 divine rings vibrated at the same time. He used the power of the outer Tao from the last divine ring to protect himself, and the boundless power of laws from the other 10 divine rings to bombard Lin Tian, causing the space around him to continuously collapse. It's too boring to play with only you, Your Excellency. It's better for the others to join in as well. The third Divine Lord laughed sinisterly. Boundless power of laws intertwined and swept toward the Sky Emperor and the other divine spirits in the distance. This kind of killing power was extremely fast and arrived in the blink of an eye. Lin Tian's eyes turned cold, and with a thought, the 10 divine regions trembled. Boundless divine light appeared around the celestial arch, and the ordinary divine spirits, forming the strongest divine spirit defensive light curtain around each of them. This light screen was the origin power of the 10 divine territories, and it blocked the third Divine Lord's power of laws. Chapter 2500. TSK. Your Majesty, you're fighting with me and yet you're protecting others? It seems like you don't know what kind of situation you're in. I'll let you understand. The third Divine Emperor looked at Lin Tian and mocked him. As he spoke, the 11 divine rings behind him trembled at the same time. Boundless laws once again pressed down on Lin Tian. The surging power of laws was extremely frightening. Lin Tian's eyes were cold. He could feel the immense pressure, but there was no fear on his face. The boundless power of the origin of the 10 divine territories and the boundless divine light continued to surge out. Moreover, he displayed all the dimensional laws that he had mastered. Together with the Reincarnation Sword and his self-created chaotic 9 Heavens Law, he faced the attack head-on. Boom! The void exploded and collapsed as the light of destruction wantonly raged. The boundless laws that the third Divine Emperor drew were mixed with the rich power of the outer way. They were extremely powerful and could annihilate everything. With a bang, Lin Tian was sent flying. Blood splattered everywhere. He steadied himself and circulated the Reincarnation Heart Sutra to quickly heal his injured body. The divine light once again swept out from all directions. This was the power of the 10 divine territories. It was the strongest power that he had as a divine king. It won't work. The third divine emperor laughed sinisterly. He moved at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, he was right in front of Lin Tian. The killing power of various laws pressed down on Lin Tian. Lin Tian's body was surrounded by boundless divine light. He swung the reincarnation sword at the third divine emperor. With a slash, the reincarnation sword light filled the sky. However, it was useless. The third divine emperor controlled the power of the outer way. It surpassed the 5 elements of yin and yang and blocked most of his power. At the same time, it was infinitely weakened. In the blink of an eye, it was all crushed. The surging killing power of law sent him flying again with a bang. More blood splattered than before. Cracks spread all over his body like a spider web. It seemed that he would collapse in the next moment. His expression was solemn, but he did not show any fear or dread. After he steadied himself, the reincarnation sword once again slashed toward his opponent. Moreover, he still used the power of the source of the god domain to protect his father, master, and the rest of the ordinary gods. At this time, although the third divine lord had not attacked these people, the other party might suddenly attack them again. He was worried that at that time, he would not be able to react in time, and would not be able to support the divine spirit light screen for the group. After all, the current third divine lord was a little frightening. It was as though she had already stepped out of the supreme level of heaven and earth. You're already no match for me, yet you still dare to divert your attention to protect others. TSK, how kind of you, Lord God King. I'm very touched. The third divine emperor laughed sinisterly. With a thick sense of mockery, he said, In order to express my gratitude, I will first kill you in front of them. After that, I will send them down one by one to accompany you. As he spoke, he suddenly seemed to have thought of something. He slapped his forehead and said in realization, Oh, sorry, I misspoke. All of you are very extraordinary. I can't simply kill you. You have to become a part of me. He looked at Lin Tian and laughed sinisterly. Especially you. You have already merged with the heart of the 10th dimension. After devouring you, the heart of the 10th direction will also exist in my body. Once I have merged with it, I will become the true God King. As he spoke, he immediately moved. His 11 divine rings moved together. The power of outer Tao and the boundless power of law pressed toward Lin Tian together. Lin Tianji felt a huge meteorite suddenly appear on his shoulder. The pressure was so great that it seemed like he would be crushed. However, he did not retreat at all. Instead, he continued to mobilize the boundless power of the 10th divine realm to meet the 3rd divine lord's attack. Boom! The battle was intense. He used all of his power to fight the 3rd divine lord. However, the power of outer Tao that the 3rd divine lord controlled was too strange and terrifying. It could almost suppress everything. The power that he used, along with the power of the origin of the 10th divine realm, did not have any substantial effect. This caused his expression to become extremely serious, and his heart to sink. After merging with the heart of the 10th dimension and becoming the God King of the 10th divine realm, the 10th divine realm was now his domain. He should be invincible within it, and could suppress any living being within it. However, the 3rd divine lord's power of outer Tao had broken through this invincibility. Being in his domain, he was not suppressed by him at all. Clang! He waved the sword of samsara. The sword of samsara shone brightly. Every beam was mixed with the power of the divine realm. This was his peak battle strength. With a sizzling sound, the void was pierced into a hornet's nest and swept toward the 3rd divine lord. The 3rd divine lord laughed sinisterly. His 11 divine rings shone brightly. The boundless power of law and the strange power of outer Tao met Lin Tian's sword of samsara, which was mixed with the power of the divine realm. After a simple collision, it was instantly crushed to pieces. Then, the turbulent power of law and the power of outer Tao did not slow down. It fell straight on Lin Tian's chest. Pft! Blood splattered. Lin Tian's chest was crushed, and a small half of his body immediately exploded. The Heart Sutra of Samsara circulated and quickly healed his wounded body. In the blink of an eye, he was completely healed. Not bad, not bad. You can withstand it. The third Divine Lord laughed sinisterly. Continue. I want to see how long you can withstand it. The 11 divine rings intertwined with unparalleled light and pressed down on Lin Tian once again. Lin Tian's expression was heavy, but he still did not retreat in the slightest. He held the sword of Samsara and attacked again. Boom! 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 The entire divine realm shook. The fierce battle caused the sturdy space of the divine realm to continuously collapse. It took a long time for it to recover. In the blink of an eye, a full 7 days passed. You really are like an undying cockroach. 7 days have passed in my hands, and you still haven't died. The third Divine Lord sneered. Lin Tian's robes were stained with blood and blood was flowing out from his mouth. The third Divine Lord's outer Tao was simply too bizarre and terrifying. In these 7 days he had used all of his techniques and unleashed his most powerful combat strength. However, he had only managed to injure the third Divine Lord slightly with a single absolute counterattack. However, it was only a slight injury and it was completely meaningless. As for himself, in these 7 days, he had been seriously injured again and again, and his aura had weakened greatly. In the distance, the Sky Emperor, an old drunkard, and the others all had solemn expressions on their faces. They could not help but clench their hands. After 7 days of battle, Lin Tian, who had transformed into a divine king, was always at a disadvantage. Now, his situation was extremely bad. The third Divine Lord stepped toward Lin Tian. His steps were slow, and he was not in a hurry at all. He looked like he had everything under control. His face was full of mockery. 7 days have passed. I will continue to play with you. Let's see if you can hold on for another 7 days. Lin Tian walked toward the third Divine Lord. His body was stained with blood, but he stood straight without the slightest fear. However, although he was not afraid, his heart was extremely heavy. This was because he really could not find a way to deal with his opponent. If this continued, he was bound to fall in his opponent's hands. Once he died, his family, friends, and disciples would all die. The third Divine Lord would never let them go. Perhaps all the living beings in these worlds would be wiped out. For a moment, he could not help but grit his teeth and clench his hands tightly. His fingernails dug deeply into the flesh of his palms, and a sense of powerlessness arose. It was also at this moment that the fist-sized heart of the 10th dimension in his body suddenly trembled. From life to death, from death to life. A hazy heavenly voice floated out and fell into his heart. It came from the heart of the 10th dimension. Only he heard these words. The reincarnation origin trembled slightly, and instantly became incomparably bright. At the same time, his right eye also trembled slightly. Suddenly his body trembled slightly. From life to death, from death to life. Was this a hint from the heart of the 10th dimension? Was this related to reincarnation? From death. His reincarnation was only a hair's breadth away from grand completion, but he could not cross that tiny hair's breadth no matter how hard he tried. When these words came out, his reincarnation origin and reincarnation eye both vibrated and resonated. Was this really related to reincarnation? To transcend through death and achieve grand completion of reincarnation? He was a little stunned, and his heart beat wildly. For the sake of that last bit of reincarnation, he had worked extremely hard and tried many methods. The only thing was that he had never thought of achieving it through death. Could death allow him to achieve grand completion of reincarnation? Crack! With a crisp sound, a part of the void distorted and collapsed. The third Divine Lord walked over with a sinister smile, getting closer and closer. Lin Tian came back to his senses with this crisp sound. He looked at the approaching third Divine Lord and paused for a moment. He looked at his father, mother, master, masteress, and wife in the distance, as well as the 10 ancestral gods and the ordinary gods who had asked him to protect them. Looking at these people, he paused again for a moment. Then, he turned his head back and looked at the vast sky. "Let's give it a try," he muttered to himself. Now, the only way he could think of to deal with the third Divine Lord's outer Tao power was to achieve grand completion of reincarnation. If he tried it with his death, there might really be a miracle that would allow him to achieve grand completion of reincarnation, defeat the third Divine Lord, protect everything, and end everything. However, there was also a possibility that he would die directly. His family, friends, disciples, ordinary gods, and other innocent beings in the divine territory, he would not be able to protect any of them. They would all die in the hands of the third Divine Lord. Of these two endings, the former was naturally extremely good. However, if it was the latter, it did not matter much because if he could not control the grand completion of reincarnation, the outcome would still be death. After that, he would still not be able to protect anything. Since that was the case, why not try it? Buzz! Behind him, the reincarnation diagram of the king's territory rushed up. It was vast and boundless, and there were endless divine light intertwining from every corner of the 10 divine territories, circling around the reincarnation diagram. At the same time, the reincarnation sword also intertwined with the reincarnation diagram and blended with it in the blink of an eye. Instantly, a wave of extremely frightening murderous energy rolled out like a monstrous wave. "Stubborn resistance, I'm talking about you." The third Divine Lord stopped and said mockingly, "Looking at you, you seem to have infinite expectations for this attack. Do you think you can hurt me? Or are you able to kill me?" He mocked. Come, I'm very magnanimous. I'll give you a chance to experience the ultimate feeling of despair." Lin Tian glanced at him and did not say anything. Chapter 2501. What? In the distance, the godly being's expressions changed at the same time. Even the celestial Darch and an old drunkard were no exception. Lin Tian was using the reincarnation diagram, the power of the God domain, and the reincarnation sword, to kill them? Boom! Boundless divine light intertwined around the reincarnation diagram. The reincarnation sword merged with it, and engulfed Lin Tian in the blink of an eye. As expected, blood splattered everywhere. Lin Tian exploded and disappeared. Only wisps of blood could be seen floating in the air. "Lin Tian! Little Ten!" The goddesses and holy maidens trembled. Tears welled up in their eyes and they couldn't help but rush forward. At this time, the celestial Darch grabbed the goddesses and an old drunkard grabbed the holy maidens. "My child won't be so cowardly as to seek his own death. My disciple won't be so cowardly as to seek his own death." The two of them spoke at the same time. At the same time, Wei remained calm and didn't show much emotion. She understood Lin Tian. Even though Lin Tian didn't say anything to her, she knew that Lin Tianyi was definitely trying something. Looking at the spot where Lin Tian had exploded, her gaze was gentle. She clasped her hands together and silently prayed. The third Divine Lord was stunned. Then, he threw his head back and laughed maniacally. "Stupid thing, attacking and killing yourself? This is the first time I've seen such a thing." Looking at the spot where Lin Tian had exploded, a mocking smile appeared on his face. Then, as if he suddenly thought of something, could it be that he realized that he was no match for me and decided to commit suicide so that I wouldn't have a chance to absorb and devour him? Naive, too naive! As long as there's still blood essence, as long as he hasn't been dead for too long, I can still absorb him. It's just that the amount of energy I can absorb will be less. With a sinister smile, he walked step by step toward the spot where Lin Tian had exploded. There was still Lin Tian's blood essence there. At this time, the boundless space of the 10-directional divine realm suddenly fell silent. The wind stopped blowing. The clouds stopped moving. The entire world suddenly became so silent that one could hear a pin drop. At the place where Lin Tian had exploded, drops of blood essence pulsed on their own. They merged on their own and began to release an immortal radiance. The hazy reincarnation substance pulsed within the blood essence. The most fundamental reincarnation light intertwined, gradually becoming more and more resplendent, more and more dazzling. It was as if a blinding divine sun had manifested here, momentarily covering all directions. Gradually, the dazzling light dissipated, and Lin Tian's figure reappeared. His eyes were slightly closed as he stood in the void. Not dead? In the distance, the expressions of the deities changed again. Before this, Lin Tian had attacked himself. His physical body had been destroyed, and even his divine soul seemed to have been shattered. They had seen it with their own eyes. But now, Lin Tian had reappeared. The goddess and all heaven's saintesses were pleasantly surprised. Seeing Lin Tian reappear, they felt as if they had regained what they had lost. Wu Yi's gaze softened, and a smile appeared on her beautiful face. The heavenly emperor and an old drunkard also smiled. Then, their gazes fell on Lin Tian, and there was a slight ripple in their eyes. The 10 directional ancestral gods were very powerful, and the third divine lord was even stronger. However, they could clearly sense their terrifying auras, which were as vast as the ocean and boundless starry sky. But now, they couldn't sense Lin Tian's aura. Lin Tian was clearly standing there, but they couldn't sense any fluctuations of energy from Lin Tian. It was as if Lin Tianji was immortal. The third divine lord was slightly taken aback, but then he laughed loudly. "It's good that you're not dead. I can devour you in one piece." As he spoke, he moved again and walked toward Lin Tian. Boundless laws swept toward Lin Tian and pressed down on Lin Tian in the blink of an eye. Pfft! With a soft sound, the boundless laws were directly shattered. Moreover, the third divine lord's body shook violently, and he was pushed back dozens of feet by the invisible aura. It was also at this time that Lin Tianwei opened her eyes. They were no longer the eye of destiny and the reincarnation eye. Her left and right eyes were intertwined with circles of sacred samsara runes, which were far purer than the sacred samsara runes in her right eye. It was like the difference between heaven and earth, and there was no comparison at all. These sacred samsara runes were perfectly intertwined with 6 special Tao seals. In an instant, everyone present trembled. Even the heavenly emperor and an old drunkard were no exception. Looking at Lin Tian's eyes, everyone felt as if they had been completely seen through. The third divine lord also trembled slightly, but in the next moment he sneered. "Pretending to be mysterious!" With a rumble, an even more turbulent power of laws intertwined, turning into a terrifying wave of laws that swept toward Lin Tian. The boundless wave of laws instantly fell in front of Lin Tian. However, in the next moment, this wave of laws trembled on its own and silently dissipated. The third divine lord was shocked. His attack had disappeared right in front of Lin Tian. Lin Tian stood in the void, as if he did not feel the third divine lord's attack at all. He lowered his head slightly and looked at his hands. The structure of his flesh, the flow of his blood, and the flow of his saint power were all extremely clear. He could even see the flow of time around him. He had mastered 90% of samsara, and once again experienced the cycle of life and death. With 90% of samsara combined with the samsara substance that had always been in his body, he had finally mastered samsara. This was the true eye of reincarnation. "Get down here!" the third divine lord said coldly. He attacked again, and the 11 body halos behind him burst forth with divine light at the same time. The blood-colored power of the outer Tao intertwined with the boundless light of laws, turning into the most violent killing force that pressed down on Lin Tian. In the blink of an eye, it once again swept toward Lin Tian, as if it wanted to destroy the 10 divine territories. However, in the next moment, this turbulent power of the outer Tao and the killing force of laws silently disappeared. The third divine lord was shocked again. "How can this be?" Lin Tian stood in the void, as if he did not see the third divine lord at all. He raised his head and looked at the distant sky. "I see it," he muttered to himself. Now that he had mastered samsara, he could see beyond the sky with the true eye of reincarnation. Just as the ancestral gods of the 10 directions had said, there was an even higher dimension above the 10 divine territories. And there was more than one. As he looked beyond the sky, his eyes gradually became incomparably deep. A faint ray of light appeared and streaked out from his eyes. It entered the sky at an extremely fast speed and disappeared in an instant. Boom! Monstrous saint power surged, shattering the clouds. Outside the third divine lord, the boundless power of laws was vast and mighty, and the power of the outer Tao boiled along with it. Very good! Very good! You've become even stronger. Devouring you will allow me to undergo the most extreme transformation possible. Looking at Lin Tian, the third divine lord laughed sinisterly, as if he had seen the most thirsty prey. At this moment, he truly unleashed his full power and swept toward Lin Tian again. I said that you will be a part of me. Transform into my strength. The boundless power of the outer Tao, mixed with the killing force of laws, fell in front of Lin Tian in the blink of an eye. However, it disappeared in an instant, and did not cause the slightest ripple around Lin Tian. In the distance, the group of ordinary gods trembled. The terrifying third divine lord's killing force was completely useless. It all disappeared in front of Lin Tian. The goddesses and all heaven's saintesses were also moved. Wu Yi's eyes became even gentler. Looking at Lin Tian in the void, the smile on her face deepened. She was extremely beautiful. We won. The celestial emperor and an old drunkard spoke at the same time with smiles on their faces. At this moment, they sensed a change in Lin Tian. Looking at Lin Tian's eyes, they could already guess everything. At the same time, on the other side, the third divine lord looked at Lin Tian in the void. At first, his eyes were cold and filled with shock and anger. Then, as if remembering something, he looked at Lin Tian's Rinnegan and trembled all over. He couldn't help but take a step back. Could it be that, the Rinnegan? Looking at Lin Tian, the fear in his eyes grew stronger and stronger. Then, he turned and fled into the distance. Lin Tian's eyes were deep and unfathomable. Looking at the third divine lord fleeing, he made no move to give chase. He raised his hand and slowly formed a hand seal. In his Rinnegan eyes, the most unique seal of the 6 paths spun. 4 words slowly fell from his mouth. 6 paths of reincarnation. This was a technique that was truly born from heaven and earth. It could change heaven and earth, and it could destroy heaven and earth with a single thought. Now, after mastering the Rinnegan eyes, he could use this saint reincarnation technique. The 10 divine realms instantly fell into a deathly silence. There was no terrifying power. The scenery of the divine realms suddenly changed. It turned into a boundless desert, hazy and turbid. A huge millstone appeared, intertwined with the vicissitudes of eternity. It was like the gear of heaven and earth, supporting everything. It also seemed like the source of destruction, as if it could easily destroy all things. The third divine lord, who had fled into the distance, was instantly enveloped in it. His entire body trembled violently as he screamed in shock, anger, and fear. The power of the outer way that transcended the primordial yin and yang and the 5 elements turned into the thickest of light screens to protect his body. However, it was useless. It transcended the yin and yang and the 5 yins. It did not exist in the myriad ways, but it could not escape the cycle of heaven and earth. The Rinnegan millstone rolled over. There was no scream as it instantly obliterated the third divine lord. Strange phenomena appeared in the world. In the next moment, as Lin Tian's Rinnegan eyes moved slightly, the Rinnegan millstone silently disappeared. The divine realms. Everything returned to normal. In the distance, everyone was stunned. Even the Sky Emperor and the Human King were no exception. Was this the great success of reincarnation? The third divine lord, who controlled the terrifying outer way, had been obliterated in an instant. Everyone felt that the gigantic samsara millstone could easily crush everything, including the greater heaven and earth. What power in heaven and earth could resist the great success of reincarnation? A gentle breeze blew. In the void, Lin Tian suddenly trembled. In his eyes, the saint reincarnation runes were gradually dissipating. He was not moved in the slightest. With the great success of reincarnation, he had sensed many things and learned more about reincarnation. The complete reincarnation was the most primitive foundation of the myriad ways, myriad powers, and the boundless universe. No one could truly control it. Even with his endless potential, he could only bear it for a short period of time. Now, the great success of reincarnation power was gradually dissipating from his body. Even the origin of reincarnation was dissipating. Regarding this, he more or less felt some regret. However, he quickly recovered his composure. If he could not truly control something, he would not be able to keep it. It was useless to feel regret. "I can still do something," he muttered to himself. Light of reincarnation intertwined in his eyes as he formed another seal. "Reincarnation of heaven." As he spoke, the light of reincarnation intertwined in front of him. A figure slowly appeared and gradually solidified. Looking at this figure, the Sky Emperor and an old drunkard were immediately moved. "This is..." The goddess and the all-heaven saintesses were shocked. Even Wu Yi was no exception. At the same time, in a place further away, the ordinary gods were all stunned. Then, all of them could not help but tremble. "Ancestor! Ancestor God!" All the gods were extremely excited. Their dead leader had actually reappeared. The light of reincarnation intertwined and gradually dissipated from the ancestor god of 10 directions. The ancestor god of 10 directions was slightly stunned. He almost lost his soul. He remembered that he was dead, but now he was alive. Then, in the next moment, he saw Lin Tian and Lin Tian's most unique Rinnegan. He instantly realized something and could not help but tremble. "Human you, ancestor god, we meet again." Lin Tian chuckled and spoke to the ancestor god of 10 directions. Reincarnation of heaven was a saint technique stored in the 6 paths of reincarnation. It could resurrect any dead creature between heaven and earth. Of course, there was a time limit. If a person had been dead for too long, reincarnation of heaven would not be able to resurrect them. The ancestral god of the 10 directions had always treated his people wholeheartedly. In order to fulfill his promise to his people, he had sacrificed himself to push him out of the third divine lord's outer Tao and asked him to protect the other gods who were still alive. Although they were enemies, Yang Qi truly admired the ancestral god of the 10 directions. Now, the great success of reincarnation power had not completely dissipated, and the ancestor god of 10 directions had not been dead for too long. Therefore, he used the great success of reincarnation that had not completely dissipated to perform reincarnation of heaven and earth, allowing the ancestor god of 10 directions to reappear between heaven and earth. With a smile on his face, he performed reincarnation of heaven after resurrecting the ancestor god of 10 directions. It enveloped the entire 10 directions divine realm, the 9th dimension, and the 8th dimension below it, allowing all the gods who had died during the battle between him and the ancestor god of 10 directions, as well as the beings of the 9th dimension and the 8th dimension who had died due to the light of destruction that had seeped in, to be resurrected one after another. It was also at this time that the power of reincarnation in his body completely dissipated, and so did his origin of reincarnation. He was no longer a reincarnated body, but a pure primordial divine body. Moreover, the origin of reincarnation in Wu Yi's body had also dissipated. However, Wu Yi's current cultivation base was sufficiently profound. Although he had lost Lin Tian's origin of reincarnation, the origin of holy light and origin of void in his body, the 2 origin of king physiques, were still in perfect condition. Moreover, they had begun to slowly fuse together, and in the blink of an eye, they had turned into a brand new physique that was far more powerful than the origin of holy light and origin of void. Lin Tian naturally sensed this. He sensed the changes in himself and Wu Yi. Reincarnation. The goddess was moved. The others were also moved. At this time, they all sensed that the power of reincarnation in Lin Tian's body had completely disappeared. Lin Tian's expression did not change much. With a faint smile, he approached the ancestor god of 10 directions. He raised a hand, and a faint light entered the ancestor god's sea of consciousness. "This is?" The ancestor god of 10 directions was shocked by his own resurrection and the disappearance of the power of reincarnation in Lin Tian's body. At this time, as Lin Tian's faint light entered the ancestor god's sea of consciousness, the shock on his face deepened, and his eyes flashed fiercely. Can you give up on your previous plan? Lin Tian smiled. When he had mastered the power of reincarnation, he had sensed a higher dimension. Using the power of reincarnation, he had made a mark on the path to a higher dimension. If they wanted to, they could step into the higher dimension at any time. He told the ancestor god of 10 directions about this. At the same time, he also told the ancestor god of 10 directions about other more important matters related to the higher dimension. The ancestor god of 10 directions' eyes flickered, and he shook his head. No. As he said these 3 words, his expression became somewhat dignified for a moment. The higher dimension was extremely terrifying. It was the source of a truly destructive disaster. After a pause, he looked at the group of ordinary gods in the distance, and then his gaze fell on Lin Tian again. Human! After saying these 2 words, he changed his tone, and his expression was unprecedentedly solemn. Divine King, thank you! Lin Tian had protected all the gods who were still alive, protected his people, and even resurrected him and the other gods who had died recently. Lin Tian had found the path to a higher dimension and told him about it, which was equivalent to helping him fulfill his promise to his people. This made him feel grateful from the bottom of his heart. In the future, we can fight side by side, Lin Tian said with a smile. He didn't say anything else. In the blink of an eye, he arrived beside the celestial Darch, an old drunkard, the goddess, the all-heavens holy maiden, and Wu Yi. Father, master, mother, masteress, Wu Yi. Looking at the 5 of them, he smiled and said, We're going back. The battle that had lasted for eons had finally come to an end. Very good. Not bad. The celestial Darch and human king praised at the same time. An old drunkard looked at the ancestral god of 10 directions and smiled calmly. Farewell, ancestral god. When you're free, you can come down and take a look at the ordinary world. Perhaps you'll gain some enlightenment. Lin Tian waved his hand with his back to the ancestral god of 10 directions, then left with the celestial Darch and an old drunkard. At the same time, with a thought, he used his status as the Divine King to change the barrier of heaven and earth of the 10 directions divine realm. From now on, people from the 10 directions divine realm would be able to tear through the barrier and enter the lower realms. The ancestral god of 10 directions' eyes flickered, and he smiled for the first time. Looking at Lin Tian's back, he said, I will. In the distance, the group of ordinary gods rushed forward and looked at the ancestral god of 10 directions with excitement. This was the leader they respected the most. In the next moment, the group of ordinary gods looked at Lin Tian in the distance and knelt on one knee. Farewell, Your Excellency. Everyone spoke in unison, their eyes filled with respect. At this moment, they acknowledged Lin Tian's status as the Divine King from the bottom of their hearts. The ancestral god was their leader. Lin Tian was their Divine King. When Lin Tian heard the voices of the deities, he could naturally sense everything. The smile on his face became a little wider. He didn't say anything. With a thought, the gate of heaven and earth appeared in front of him, and he disappeared with the celestial Darch and the others. The ancestral god of 10 directions looked in the direction Lin Tian had disappeared with a smile on his face, and he bowed slightly. Lin Tian led the celestial Darch and an old drunkard out of the 10 directions divine realm and told them everything about the higher dimensions. A higher dimension, a great shuffle. An old drunkard narrowed his eyes. It's very troublesome. The celestial Darch said. The goddesses and all heaven's holy maidens' expressions were incomparably heavy. Even the calm Wu Yi was no exception. Lin Tian had told them many things about the higher dimensions, and many things were beyond their imagination. It was too dangerous and terrifying. It's all right. We still have plenty of time to become stronger. In the future, we will definitely be able to surpass everything. Lin Tian smiled. The celestial Darch and the others looked at each other. Their solemn expressions disappeared in the blink of an eye, and they all smiled. That's right. The celestial Darch smiled. The group passed through the 9th dimension and soon stepped into the 4th dimension. Speaking of which, master, where did you move them to? Lin Tian asked an old drunkard. His other relatives and friends, his disciples and generals, his senior brothers, and the main clan of the immortal court used to live in the 10 Directions Ancient Star. However, the 10 Directions Ancient Star was no longer there. It had turned into the heart of the 10th dimension and merged with his life essence. He didn't know where those people who were moved away by an old drunkard were now. An old drunkard smiled faintly and told them the precise coordinates. The group soon arrived at a vast great realm. We've settled everyone. Let's go over now. The goddess smiled. She, the all-heaven saintesses, and Wu Yi had been moved to this great realm by an old drunkard. Before they left for the 10 Directions Divine Domain, they had already settled Ji Yu and the others in the same place, where the main clan of the Immortal Court resided. This great realm was comparable to the Immortal Domain, or even vaster. At first, there were no other living beings in it. It was a great realm that an old drunkard had carefully selected to move the living beings in the 10 Directions Ancient Star. The group soon arrived at a vast immortal mountain in the eastern region of the great realm. Inside, the main clan of the Immortal Court rested, and the spiritual energy was very rich. Lin Tian saw many familiar faces in the great realm. Everyone he knew was living here in good condition. This is the Heavenly Emperor? Greetings, Senior! Everyone knew about an old drunkard and had seen this place before. However, it was the first time for many of them to meet the Heavenly Emperor. They immediately bowed respectfully. Grandpa! Ruoxian jumped over, her eyes shining brightly. This was the first time she had seen her grandfather. The Heavenly Emperor smiled and looked at Ruoxian lovingly. Good girl. She was his biological granddaughter. Master! Feng Xingtianzuan, Primal Chaos Heavenly Sovereign, and the others were very excited to finally see their master again after so many years. Moreover, he was in his true form now. At the same time, everyone quickly learned about the battle in the 10 Directions Divine Domain. Divine King? Kid, you're really, even you can only bear the burden of a complete reincarnation cycle for a period of time. What a pity! If you could maintain it for a long time, you'd be invincible. You could even destroy the greater realm with a single thought. There's nothing to pity. Being safe is the best thing. That's right. Yeah. Whooshing Crocodile, by Ziki, and the others were shocked and emotional when they learned about the battle in the Divine Domain. Overall, however, it was an incomparably joyous day. The battle that had lasted for eons had finally come to an end. On this day, a banquet was held in the Immortal Court in the new Greater Realm. The celebration lasted for 7 days and 7 nights. The Greater Realm didn't have a specific name, so everyone called it the Divine King Realm. This was because it was Lin Tian who had ended the battle that had lasted for eons, and Lin Tian was now the Divine King. A year passed in the blink of an eye. Husband, Tianyin has grown up. She can get married now. After so many years, Tianyin had become a slender and elegant woman. In terms of appearance, she wasn't inferior to Wu Yi at all. She hugged Lin Tian's arm intimately, her eyes full of anticipation. Oh! Lin Tian looked at Tianyin, then at Wu Yi and the others, then at the Heavenly Emperor and Goddess. Now that they were in the Immortal Court, all of his friends and family were here. It is indeed time. The Heavenly Emperor smiled. An old drunkard also had a smile on his face. He looked at Yenya and said to Lin Tiandao, "Yer, you should marry him too." Then, he looked at Yenya's master, the marvelous mathematician, and asked, "Do you have any objections?" "Of course not." The marvelous mathematician smiled. An old drunkard had proposed marriage to Lin Tian a long time ago. At that time, he didn't have much interaction with them, so he couldn't interfere too much with Yenya's marriage. Therefore, he didn't give a positive answer. However, things were different now. After so many years, he now knew more about Lin Tian. Moreover, Yenya had always been with Wu Yi and Jiyu. Wu Yi and the others knew that an old drunkard had proposed marriage to Lin Tian, so they had long regarded Yenya as one of them. They got along very well. Therefore, when an old drunkard mentioned it again, he naturally agreed. What about Yar? An old drunkard looked at Yar. After all, he still had to ask for her opinion. Yar stole a glance at Lin Tian, then looked at Wu Yi and Jiyu. Wu Yi and the others all smiled and nodded at her. She replied softly. After all, she was still a little shy about marriage. An old drunkard smiled and nodded. Then, he looked at Lin Tian and asked, What about you? Master, it's up to you. Lin Tian smiled. An old drunkard had arranged this marriage for him. Naturally, he couldn't go against it. Most importantly, after so many years together, Yar was indeed very good to him. She had helped him a lot. After pausing for a moment, he looked at Wu Yi and Jiyu and asked Yao Tianyin and Yar, Well, can we do it together? He had already held his wedding with Wu Yi and Jiyu. However, since he was going to hold his wedding with Tianyin and Yar, he thought that it would be more appropriate for everyone to be together. This would show that they were a family. Tianyin and Yar naturally knew what Lin Tian was thinking. They both nodded. They also thought the same in their hearts. Lin Tian nodded and smiled gently. It's settled then. The wedding will be held in 3 days. The celestial arch smiled. Weddings were very solemn affairs. Naturally, they had to spend time and effort to prepare. 3 days passed quickly. On this day, in the godly king realm, Lin Tian, Yao Tianyin, Yar, Wu Yi, Jiyu, Sushu, Shui Yi, and Bai Qiu got married at the same time in this vast great world. One after another, top inheritances and top experts came to congratulate them. Congratulations! The ancestor god of 10 directions stepped out of the 10 divine realms, bringing along 9 supreme gods of heaven and earth to personally offer his blessings. This wedding was solemn and grand. It could be said that the entire world was celebrating. In the blink of an eye, several years had passed. On the Milky Way imperial planet, the peak of Mount Tai was densely packed with people. Lin Tian brought along Wu Yi, Yao Tianyin, Yar, Jiyu, Sushu, Shui Yi, Bai Qiu, and the Roxian to Mount Tai. The Violet Fairy and Lin Shi were also with them. The little Taichu, the whooshing crocodile, and the white tiger became very small and fell among Lin Tian's hair. The group had all changed into the Milky Way imperial planet's clothing, but it was difficult to conceal their extraordinary temperament. Lin Tian and Wu Yi especially attracted the attention of the people on Mount Tai. Are we not going to care about the higher dimensions? Wu Yi asked softly. Not for the time being. Lin Tian smiled. There's a saying on this ancient planet, if there's wine today, let's drink in the morning. If there's trouble tomorrow, let's worry tomorrow. He said. It's necessary to work hard to become stronger, but it's better to be idle now. Well, Kid Lin is right. Lord Crocodile agrees. Yeah. These 2 sentences are quite good. Lord Tiger also thinks that these 2 sentences are very reasonable. Then, Lord Tiger thought of 2 sentences that fit this sentence very well. Come, listen carefully. Today, there's a girl who invited you today. If you miss this opportunity, you won't have another chance. The white tiger glanced at the group of young girls on Mount Tai, and his eyes lit up. Lord Tiger, I want to go. Lin Tian. Get lost. I had #yen. Lord Tiger hasn't finished yet. Lord Tiger is completely with a pure heart, thinking. Get lost. On the peak of Mount Tai, the group gradually walked away. The end of the book. This chapter had more than 7,000 words. Writing the words, the end of the book, meant that the King of 10 Directions was finished. Previously, many readers left messages for the dragon, hoping that the King of 10 Directions would not end. They were very reluctant. The dragon was also very reluctant. However, the King of 10 Directions had been writing for more than 3 years. Although there were many people who were reluctant, it was still time to end it. The novel mentioned a higher dimension beyond the 10 dimensions. There was a real source of destruction in it. Many readers hoped that the dragon would continue writing and that Lin Tian would go to a higher dimension to fight. Therefore, the dragon wrote such an open ending. Everyone could imagine the scene of Lin Tian and the others fighting in a higher dimension to their heart's content. As for the introduction of characters like Wui, who everyone liked very much, the dragon would update his WeChat public account one after another. At the same time, the dragon would customize some exclusive gifts for the King of 10 Directions. The gifts were free and would be given to readers on the WeChat public account. He would also give out some red packets. Those who liked it could follow. The dragon's WeChat public account was Sleepy Dragon. Everyone opened WeChat and searched for Sleepy Dragon on the public account to follow. Then, he sincerely thanked the readers who had been supporting and accompanying the dragon, especially those who had been silently subscribing. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Your support has allowed the King of 10 Directions to win glory time after time. Back to the matter of the new book. After writing for so many years, the dragon's physical fitness was much worse than before. He would have to take some time to rest. The new book would be published in January next year, and it would be a fantasy novel. As for the specific time of the new book, after it was confirmed, the dragon would once again thank everyone for their continuous support on WeChat. Thank you, my friends. See you in the next book. Be there or be square. Genius remembered this site's address in 1 second. Pinnacle Mobile Reading Website. You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.